Hello, I'm Michelle Powers, and I'm talking about creativity in the visual arts, the elements of art, in this series of videos on YouTube. I previously had discussed who I am. Most people know that I'm an artist, a painter mainly. I like to sketch and draw, and I have an education in art education, and I'm a fine artist as well. I'm a master artist and master teacher in art. Today we're going to start on the elements, the keys or the laws, or the fundamentals of art that everybody who wants to be familiar with art and able to just keep things at the tip of their fingers on how to draw will benefit from this. If you're a teacher especially, this is a good class, or these videos are good lessons for you to learn to teach art in your classrooms if you're elementary or high school or middle school, it doesn't matter. Or if you're just an adult that wants to learn more about how to draw, this is where you should be. Dots and lines are the topics today, and that's one and going on 2 dimensions. And we are going to be intertwining how art is influencing science, math, and engineering and technology today, and also language arts. And it's really started, we know for sure, well, actually in the Greek classics, but we in Western Europe and America are familiar now with Renaissance to the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists, and the modern art to abstract is what we're going to be finishing with. I introduced everyone to my favorite artists from those times. In the Renaissance, my 2 favorites are Da Vinci for sketching and learning, and he was an engineer who invented all kinds of machines, including the screw, up to helicopters and the camera. And he did wonderful drawings and paintings and preferred to be called an artist. And Michelangelo, who is a colorist, and we will be talking about him later on. And then in Impressionism, I feature Van Gogh, who did amazing line and dot drawings and developed them in color. And in his own time did not go over well, but now is so amazingly popular and expensive, and in all the museums in the world. And then we have the contemporary art with abstract, and Kandinsky is one of those artists. I will be using his art to illustrate the use of the breakdown in geometry and mathematical concepts, and also pop art, and the amazing influence and how visually you can see, after knowing technology, the amazing use of dots in art. So the first thing that we did, that we found out from a man in the Impressionists, was Seurat. He did drawings and paintings only with dots and dots of color. And of course that's how photographs are made up, and they're called pixels. In the computer you can pixelate photographs and see them break down and see them individually of color or different values and shades of charcoal. And today I want to emphasize a few things that we use. Here's a viewfinder. I recommend you get one, or you make one. You can make it out of a piece of paper and then cut another square in. What you do is focus on around you on something you want to draw. And the thing is, it might be a tree outside. The thing that's amazing about a viewfinder is that it helps you observe better because you're focused. Remember, the power of observation is the number 1 point or part of art, and it's over everything, and science derives from that because it's also the number 1 power in science, observation. And so use your viewfinder and pick out still life or something in a still life. I have a pumpkin here from Halloween. It's fall, so we have stuff like this around. And it would be great to put that out and on a table and use your viewfinder to, if you go up close to it, you see it larger, or if you have it farther away, you'll see it take a smaller size. We'll be studying that element later on too. There's so many parts, but there aren't too many for you to really learn. I hope you write them all down. But right now we're at the very basic dots and lines. And we're going to, I've already talked about pixels, and we're going to do, I'm going to show you some things on my newsprint. Newsprint is a good thing to just experiment with. You need some charcoal. This is really nice, like charcoal chalk, and it makes a really nice movement and mark on paper, newsprint especially. And we'll make a dot. Can you see that? You can see that dot. And here's another dot. And then you can connect those dots with a line. Now don't use a ruler. See, it's not an even line. You can try to make an even line better. We'll put another dot down here, let's say, and then make a line from that dot down here. Okay, so a line is between two dots. It comes between two dots. And that may seem really simple, but when you start using it, you won't be thinking about it. It'll be in your subconscious more than anything. Also pencils, like charcoal pencils, different sizes, not size so much, but quality. Dark, soft, hard, and so on. And this is a pencil. There are all kinds of pencils, drawing pencils you can use at different sizes and darkness. And this is a white charcoal pencil to add highlights onto a drawing. Those are really fun to use. And these are wonderful charcoal pencils, and there's hard, soft, and medium. And you can use any of those. Then there's these smoothers you can buy, and that is something, if you make a line with a charcoal pencil, make a line by pushing hard and doing light, and you get light and dark lines. It's hard to see that. Then you take a blender. I'm going to try to move the camera so you can see it. And you can move those, go across those lines like that, and you make some shading. Yeah, you make shading. And that's how you start drawing from a line. You can make a line from a point that is a dot, and then go all around making curved lines. Excuse me. Just remember, this is raw footage. I'm doing this by myself in my kitchen studio. And these are interesting lines. If you make them dark, make them move around, but don't even lift it up. See, it's still just a line, and it's coming to another point at the end, and that is the other dot. And you end up having quite a curvy, interesting shape. That can be called an abstract shape. And when I learned these ideas when I was only 8 years old in Missouri, from my art teacher in grade school. So it's something everybody should be familiar with in this civilization, Western civilization. Anyone who wants to know that abstract art isn't something to laugh at or scoff at or not understand. You should understand it, because abstraction is in everything, and it's where the imagination lives too. The imagination is good in science, as play, as fun, and it opens all kinds of doors and windows for you to start thinking, and de-stresses you and helps you understand that there are other things around you, and this is a release, and now you can think about other things. Imagination is a living experience, and you need to use your imagination a little bit every day. It's a healthy thing, like exercise. So if you like to draw or sketch, just sketch. Find things you'd like to. Take your sketchbook. Remember, we talked about sketchbooks or newsprint pads of different sizes, and you could just take a charcoal pencil and maybe one of these blenders, a little blender with you. Here's a smaller size, and a kneadable eraser, so you can make it into all kinds of shapes, so you can go all over the page and do all kinds of things with the charcoal lines that you're making. See, okay, I used that line. It's already got dark, and I blended it a little bit. It's kind of hard to see on this. There you can see it kind of up close. But try experimenting with lines and the different pencils, charcoal, lead, whatever, and other tools that you have to make shading and experiment with lines, curvy lines, straight lines, and between 2 points. That's one way to start. One way to use dots to make an interesting part of your drawing is to use what's called stippling. And stippling is just lots of dots, building up dots. Yeah, just building up dots like that. And there are artists, you'll see it in artist sketches and drawings from other times. Once you know what it is, you'll start noticing it. You may have seen drawings by Leonardo da Vinci or Van Gogh that make you wonder, wow, how is that done? And they just start experimenting with lines and dots and built up a beautiful drawing from that. And then you see the whole drawing. Well, I'll show you examples of that in just a little bit. Okay, so we have what pixels are, just drawing with dots and stippling, making a pattern or a texture with stippling with dots. I mentioned several artists that use dots and lines. A lot of pop artists experimented with dots and lines. A lot of contemporary art has that kind of thing in, and I could drop names, but I don't want to say it. You go and find a book on abstract art or contemporary art and just start looking, and you'll see all kinds of ways that that's used. Okay, then there is, in lines, there's a way to make textures, and one is called crosshatching. Now I have this shape here, if I can see if I can put the camera here, and it has this funny, like a mountain. And I'm going to take this, my pen here, this is just a felt tip pen, and draw lines along one side of it. So see, I've got shading from lines, just lines making shades. And now I'm going to take the lines and do this called crosshatching. You see the crosses starting to show from the lines intersecting, and it makes a pattern. And if you look at other master drawings, you'll see people using crosshatching to make shading is one way. Another way to make shading is to take a line of chalk or charcoal and blend it with one of these blenders and start just using it like a pen or pencil. And that's a real fun way, and you can start to move in on a face, for instance, and make contours and shading, make hollows in the cheeks, all kinds of ways. Just experiment with that. So we have cross-hatching in lines, outline. When you outline something, don't do anything else but just put your pen down on the paper and just one line, just look at the subject, maybe a person sitting there in a chair while you're watching TV, and just draw that person's outline. And you don't have to even make it right. It could be all moving all over the place, but you basically got the shape. The more you practice, the more you start to see your outline or the contours of that person. But if you want to be really quick, gestures are the place to go. And they are, when you look at something, especially a person, and if they're moving or dancing around, a gesture is like a real fast movement. And it just catches the instant of the movement. You don't know exactly what that person's doing, but you know they're there moving. A gesture establishes an identity, an energy force. And from there on, you can do all kinds of things with the gesture if you want, or just leave it there. Some gestures are absolutely breathtaking, all alone on a white page with maybe some really nice, beautiful, dark charcoal, and frame it. And there's all kinds of ways to find out what is a piece of art? Why is that art? Ask those questions. When you see something maybe that you've done and it strikes you and you think, wow, I did that, I like that. I want to frame that for myself. I want to remember this. And that is the beginning of Impressionism, really. There wasn't Impressionism until the 1800s, and Monet is probably the father of that. We'll talk about him when we go to color. But all painters, and mostly painters are an impressionist, are physicists, actually. They work with light and color and energy force like that. So they don't use outlines, they don't use contours so much. They just use the gesture of something, and it's really quick and explores a different part of an object. It takes a lot of observation to become an impressionist, but if you learn how to do it, it's one of the best, most rewarding things you could do. So we have looked at a lot of different styles, ideas in dots and lines. I want to show you some examples real quickly here. This is my Da Vinci's notebooks. Remember I said you should go find some books in the library or buy some? These I have because I love these artists the most. This is he's an engineer, remember? He invented all kinds of machines like the machine gun, the tanks, the helicopter. But this is his study. This lady, the lady over here, look how dreamy she looks, with just a few lines and then shaded from those lines. And then this is a outline of a profile of a man, and he's got all kinds of notes all around the man, like he's numbers and words, and that makes it real interesting. He has it inside around his ear. He's done some one-sided shading so that all the lines of the shading go the same way. The same thing under the eye. The eye really stands out there. And that makes it really interesting to put numbers and notes and everything right on your sketch. They're sketches. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a drawing from his imagination, and you know it's his imagination. And that is, you know, it's very active. Now you can have really negative things, objects to draw, but this is like a monstrous kind of face just with lines and how they come together. It's really amazing how they develop into amazing kinds of drawings that you don't forget. I have another book here that one of my favorite all-time artists is Van Gogh. I think of him as my friend. I really like things he's done, and his life was very difficult. He was a very spiritual man. He was a pastor, Protestant pastor for a long time, and he was way ahead of his time. And he did some drawings. He invented lines. Mostly a master artist does his own inventions of the basic elements like dots and where dots lead, or how to use dots or lines. And most people know immediately when they see this, oh yes, that's Van Gogh, because look at the movement, the energy in the lines. It's all lines, and up above in the sky are dots. And the man is lines, the field, he's sowing seeds, is developed through lines and the patterns of the lines. And it's really amazing. The top of the grass in the back, all dots. That's a dot and line drawing with a figure in it. Not that easy to do, but wow, is that ever interesting though to see. This is a portrait of a man made from lines. Just all kinds of lines. His beard is full of all kinds of lines going every which way, but some in repetitive order. He's done crosshatching in his coat. You can see the crosshatching to make shading, make a pattern. He's spent a lot of time just inventing lines, and this is one of his most famous kind of line, the curvy, I call it the curvy wurvy line. He's done this cypress tree. Later it's a beautiful painting. This is all black and white lines, and I believe it's ink and pencil, reed, pen, and ink. Yes, reed pen. Remember I talked about the bamboo pens the Japanese have for drawing and writing. So this later is seen in paintings, that kind of curvy line, only it's in paint. Very interesting. So Van Gogh is a great artist to look at for fascinating inventions of lines to draw and establish a rendering or an image, an idea. This is one of the most famous contemporary artists there ever was. I saw this whole show in Boston. Le Cahiers de Picasso is his notebooks from the very beginning when he was a pre-classical artist in his youth up through the very end of his life when he made simple, colorful lines like a child. And he was very interested in the imagination as childlike play. Most artists do that. When they reach that point, they realize that children have the most wonderful imaginations and they are very alive in their ideas because they don't have inhibitions, I guess. This is one of his early cubist drawings. It's all a drawing with using geometric forms. And as the Renaissance drawers and sketchers and painters developed, they developed geometry from their drawings and mathematical concepts. And in the modern world, our artists who've gone through amazing paintings and history actually went the other way. They took apart the art and made it into geometric shapes, and that is Cubism in the 20th century. And Picasso made it very famous. He didn't really invent it, but he took it and developed it. It's probably to his extent. You can see circles, rectangles, all kinds of shapes there, made out of lines. And here's lines, cross lines, and shaded areas that make triangles. Cross-hatching over here, using lines, and lines here and curvy lines making a guitar. It's really interesting, and in the end it's a shape of a woman playing a guitar. But you don't see that right away. You see this abstraction of a woman, abstraction, a shape taken from a real person and made into this art form in abstract cubist art. We're going to look a lot at abstract art. It's the final, I feel it's the final level of creativity, innovation, inventiveness, whatever you want to call that state of mind. The abstract is the final level of that we have as a human being in development in this on this planet. And we haven't seen the end of it yet. And it's an open place where it takes you places you never dream of going, expresses things, ways you feel, ways you think that you can't do in any other way but splotches, lines, dots of color, whatever you use. And we're going to be just really exploring abstract art for children and teenagers and adults throughout these videos. And I think you won't be lost because it's not that hard to understand. And not only that, it's fun. It's a fun place to be. It's not threatening. It's interesting. It's where you want to go. I want to show you my little painting. This is part of a series of abstract paintings of the ocean. And it was a release for me. It's a wonderful feeling. There's some anger in some of them. You just don't know all of it for sure. But it's just interesting to look at, and a lot of movement and energy. Just a little tiny painting. It's going to be a larger painting, probably 4 by 4 feet. So I'm not done with it. It's a painting sketch. So I wanted you to get the idea of sketching first, getting an idea first of what you want to do by observation or thinking, a concept you'd like to illuminate, illustrate, however you want to think of it. Use your viewfinder to focus in on parts of what you're going to draw. Sketch it out. Sketch it out on big pieces of paper like your newsprint, or on little places. I don't know where you want to draw, where you're comfortable. Put it in your notebooks, your sketchbooks, so that you can keep it Keep it to have reference from, because you may build this up into a big painting one day. Make sure you have something to sketch with, and just go and draw some gestures and some contours and outlines, and use some crosshatching and stippling to make some interesting parts of those forms that you've put together. Next week we're going to do shapes and forms, where dots and lines come together and make a shape. I've talked a little bit about that today, and how you can twist it around and put it into a form, and we're going to get into 3 dimensions that way. I wanted to tell you that the story of my first abstract experience. I've been drawing and painting since I was 3. When I was 8 years old, my teacher's husband was the art teacher in the little town in Missouri where I was living, and he came in and told us to take our pencil on a big piece of paper. They gave us a piece of paper, and just start at one place and not lift our pencil again until we're done. And then when we're done, at the end of the song, he put on some music, just some music without words, and we did that, and I went all over my page. I was real free by then. I don't know what other kids did. And then the music stopped. We took our pencils and put them down. They said, now you look at those shapes you just drew, and see if you can find anything in there that you understand, that maybe it's a person, maybe it's a flower. He didn't know, a tree, and an animal. And so I did, and I found a marching man playing a trumpet. And I don't know where that came from, maybe because my dad had marched in a band. And so I did that. I found that, and I colored it in until it pulled out of the abstract shapes that I just scribbled without thinking to this beautiful music. Abstract art is amazing, an amazing experience. And you're going to have those experiences if you stay watching these videos. Thank you very much, and have a great art experience.